Welcome back to part 4 of our cabinet for our table saw. I've been kind of busy getting everything put together. So let's take a look and see what it looks like now. I did try to spare everybody the cutting and whatnot, but now comes the tricky part. So let's go take a look. So here's the first cabinet that we made. I've removed the drawers just so I could make it a little lighter and easier to move it around. But what I've done is I made a frame for the second part of the cabinet, and this is the cabinet that's going to house the shop vac. And I've already got a shop vac sitting in there just to make sure that it fits. But I built my frame the same way I did the other frame. I put 3/4 plywood on the sides and on the bottom. Again, I'm not doing it like the directions say, because the directions say not to put this bottom piece of plywood on and to leave it open so you could slide the shop vac in. But I kind of didn't want to do that. So I put plywood on both sides. I've got my wheels on. So now it rolls. Got my casters. Now what I need to do is I need to figure out how to trim the sides. I want to make this gap go away. And the reason why that gap is there is because I didn't want to use excess plywood, because plywood comes in sheets of 4x8, and if you cut everything 2 foot wide, well, then you've got more plywood than you need. If you cut something 25.5 inches wide, well, then you're going to use a lot more plywood than what you really need. This section right here is going to be open to allow the hose from the shop vac to come through, but I am going to trim this out, and that's the tricky part. I kind of got to plan this so it looks nice and neat, like these trim pieces right here look. See? So that's what I'm going to be doing next. Hopefully I'll be able to finish this up in part 4. Might be part 5 to just show you overall what it looks like when it's done. So again, thank you for watching. So I did fast forward quite a bit in the project, meaning that I've got all the trim pieces on. You can see the side trim pieces. Got all my trim around that cabinet as well as the cabinet that I built before. I've already got my table saw set up because I'm getting ready to do some more cutting. I've got my sub top on. Now what I mean by sub top is that I'm going to be putting another top on top of this one. And I'll kind of explain, because it's another tricky process. I've got to cut out a section in here before I put another top on, which I can turn this way or this way. Again, it's part of the directions. I think I'm going to follow those part of the directions, or that part of the directions. But I got the trim on the other side as well. And I wound up having to buy a different vacuum. The vacuum that I had purchased for this specifically did not fit my table saw. The hose was too narrow or too small, so I wound up getting another vacuum like the one I purchased before. But no worries. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making my door. So I've got a door that's going to go here. It's going to be a piano hinge, and then a clasp that attaches to this side to lock it or to close it, keep it attached. That way I can keep this stored in here. But I figured, since I've got this already built, it's almost done, I might as well put my table saw on it and put it to good use. Fast forwarding a little bit more, so far, you know, you saw I got my trim on. Now what I've gone ahead and done is I've patched all the holes the best I could all the way around where the trim goes. So now what I need to do is I need to sand all this to make those holes disappear. I've also installed my stop for my door, which is this little piece right here. I went ahead and put that in so my door can close to that. before I put my piano hinge on and my door clasp, or my barrel clasp is what it's called. That'll attach to there to keep the door closed, but this will keep it from going inside the cabinet. I've also marked out the part where I've got to cut out for my subtop before I put my actual top on. And again, like I mentioned before, this top is going to be able to be coming out this way and hanging over, or turning this way and hanging over the side, depending on where I want to put my router. A lot of times you might be able to just use the router on this side, but the other idea is to be able to use the router on this side if you're cutting long pieces of wood. And again, that's what this top is for. It's a cut. It's basically a cut-off table, and the idea is to be able to have a table where you have enough room for longer pieces to come across it. So that's where we're at right now. Again, I'm going to go ahead and start sanding this thing, and you know, we still have to stain it. I haven't decided on that yet, but we're going to get through it. Everything is sanded, and I've got my door installed using my piano hinge. I don't know if you can see it or not, but piano hinge goes all the way down the side of the door. It attaches to the frame and the actual door, and then the door will stop on that stop. Now I just need to put my barrel clasp on here, but I'm going to hold off on that until I'm ready to stain it. I also started to work on my actual top. This is my top piece. Now, if I slide this out of the way, I have to do this carefully. There is the hole that I needed to cut for my subtop, and you'll kind of get the idea what I'm doing once we get to that point. But I also had to drill some holes in my actual top because I need to cut out this piece. So, slide that this way. So what I need to do now is I need to cut out this, and I've got a couple lines. I was messing with some stuff, trying to figure stuff out, but basically what I need to do is I need to cut out right along this line, around the outside of each circle, get rid of this, cut a new piece to fit in this area, so that way I can pick it up and I can turn it and move it same way I can turn and move this, because this piece will either sit on the side of the cabinet or it will sit coming out of the back of the cabinet, depending on what I'm doing. And I can kind of explain that later. At this point, I've got my top on, and I've got my piece cut out. So basically what this is I've got my subtop, which you can see I've got my subtop, and I've got this section cut out, and I've left a gap so this part could actually sit in there. And again, the idea is, number one, to be able to detach it, turn it this way, and reattach it, so that way I can have a router station here on the side, or I can have a router station coming out the back this way, so I can feed long things or long pieces of wood through that router. Now, the reason for this little access door is not only to be able to reach the vacuum if need be, but it's also to allow the hose to come out through here to attach to what will be a router fence. And again, that's something that I'm still working on. It's going to really take me a little bit more time, so I'm probably going to end this video with staining this, clear coating this, and then I'll work on this later. I'm not sure yet. Again, this is a work in progress, but this whole purpose of this little trap door or this little top is to allow for the hose of the vacuum to come out if you're using the router. And again, the router station will be somewhere over here, and this top is going to be made to where you can turn it either long ways or across like this. And you know, again, it's a process, but that's really what's going on with this. Other than that, the whole cabinet's done. I just need to stain it and finish this up. The cabinet is now stained. I'm still working on the very top part of it, which is the router station. And this is what I've got so far. I've done a couple practice pieces, and what I'm planning on doing is I'm planning on cutting out this circle right here and then drilling some holes to attach a router plate in. Of course, I'm going to have to router from here out to this line, this outside line, because that's the width of my router plate. And the router plate's actually going to sit inside here and mount underneath this section. And again, like I said, this can be moved to this side, or it could be out here on the end for longer pieces, but it just depends on what I'm doing. So this has taken me a while because I've had to do some thinking on it. I want to make sure that I do it right, because if I mess this up, then I've got to build a whole new top for this. And I would really hate to do that, considering how this project is almost done. Now, my door, everything's stained. I didn't stain the inside. No point in staining the inside because there's just going to be a vacuum in there anyway. But I'm getting ready to cut this out and mount my router plate to it, and then stain the top, maybe probably sand this a little bit, and we're done. So the top is finally on. Top is stained. I've got my router station. This is basically where my router plate is going to sit, and it's going to screw into these holes. The router will be on the bottom. Again, I can move this if I'm cutting long pieces of wood over here, or if I want to do something like cut smaller pieces, I can move it over to this side. That's the whole basic concept of having a movable top. Now, the top, it's actually attached underneath in each 4 spots, like one spot here, one spot here, one spot here, one spot here. I've got some screw-in adapters that go into the wood, and then the bolt that I've got in here actually screws through this piece and into this piece. So they're like self-threading anchors, if you will, that actually are inside this piece on the top, and then I've got bolts that run through this piece going into that piece, which actually hold this top from coming up. Now all I need to do is unscrew those, spin it around, reattach them, done deal. So again, this is quite involved. This is probably one of the most involved projects I've done in a long time. So I'm gonna have to sign off for part 4 and say stay tuned for part 5. Part 5 is basically, I'm gonna clear coat this thing, I'm gonna attach the router, put the shop back in, put the hardware on the door, put the hardware back on the drawers, and we're gonna deliver it. So thank you for watching my channel. Please stay tuned for part 5 of this project. And as always, I thank you for watching. See you next time in the What Now Workshop.